Hello, and welcome to another edition of History with a Drag Queen, starring me, your host, Carla Marks. Thank you for tuning in once again. This is episode 3 of History with a Drag Queen. I'm very excited to be doing it, and the response has been overwhelming, so I'm really excited. If you enjoy this, click subscribe on that button down below to the Cabaret Calgary YouTube channel. I will be here every Monday until something happens. I don't know. I'll probably be here for a long time. So keep subscribing. You'll get all the history with a drag queen you never knew you needed. So this week I'm going to do something a little different. Instead of one topic for a whole lot of time, I'm going to do a couple of short topics. We're going to do 5 quick topics. Or if I get really long and I'll be like, screw it, we'll pick those up later. So we're going to have fun. We're going to do a bunch of mini topics. We'll see how far we get. Okay? Topic number 1, the Treaty of Tordesillas. Now, you might be saying, what the hell is that? And that sounds delicious. Is that the new product that Taco Bell has come up with? It's not. The Treaty of Tordesillas happened in 1494. And you might wonder, okay, what does that have to do with me? Why are we talking about treaties from a long-ass time ago? Well, it actually was one of the most important treaties that has ever been signed between 2 powers. Well, 3. It was signed between the Pope. All right, cool, sure. Pope, yeah, great, why not? It was also signed between Portugal and Spain. Now, these were the 2 countries that were really out there pushing hard for expansion. They called it discovery, which is like really shitty term, because how do you discover like 25 million people living in North America? Like, they didn't just turn to each other one day and say, hey, good news, we've been discovered. Nobody gives a shit. So yeah, don't call it discovery anymore. It's, European expansion. Anyways, Europe's expanding. Portugal, Spain, they're checking out new territories. And eventually, this has been going on for about 70 years. And there's some conflicts that are starting to arise. Who owns what? Who has legitimacy? And so in those days and age, you could go to the Pope and be like, hey, Pope, what should we do? And people were like, yeah, this is a good idea. This guy has delusions that God is directly talking to him. Sounds like a legitimate basis for international law. And so they did. Spain and Portugal were like, who owns what? And they bring all this information to the Pope, and he's like, give me the best maps you've got. So they do. There's parts of Africa that they've discovered to them, parts of South America that are new to them, the Caribbean, and a little bit of, what they think might be North America. And the Pope goes, okay, cool. What should we do? He just takes a pen, and in 1494, he goes down the middle, and he says, everything on this side is Spanish, everything on this side is Portuguese, I'm out. And everyone's like, cool, this is great. Everyone, meaning just Portugal and Spain, France and England, are like, what are we, like, the unloved in-laws? Do we not get a share of this? And the Pope's like, no, you don't. And so basically the whole undiscovered world was just divided between Spain and Portugal, which is kind of interesting. And if you ever wondered why Brazil speaks Portuguese and the rest of South America speaks Spanish, that's why. Because literally one day the Pope just drew a line and he said anything to the right is Portugal, anything to the left is Spain. The line went through Brazil, so Brazil became Portuguese. Weird tidbit for us Canadians, that if you actually, depending on which map you look at and what he kind of, the Pope did, the line also extends north all the way through Newfoundland. So that might explain the Newfie accent somewhat. Maybe they're actually speaking Portuguese. Could be. Number 2, let's talk about Galileo. Why did he get into so much shit? Everybody knows about Galileo Galilei. He was an Italian astronomer who changed the way we think of the world, and he's kind of always held up as this big example of why church and science don't get along, because the church and science didn't get along. Because the church will lock him up in a tower and be like, you suck, Galileo, and he's like, suck this. Wow, that's actually, not far off. But anyways, so why was he such a big deal? We can do another one on why Galileo gets into trouble with the church. That's a whole long and really petty fight. And really, the more you learn about Galileo, you're kind of like, yeah, he's kind of a dick. Which you could probably expect from, a 17th century, prima donna professor. I don't get it. Anyways, so why was Galileo such a big deal? What did he really do? Well, he did a couple of things. One was that he was one of the first guys to use the telescope to create a lot of discoveries. Now, he didn't discover the telescope. That was Hans Lippershey. He was a Dutch eyeglass maker. But Galileo was one of the first scientists who really saw the potential of that. And he's like, wait, I can see how far with this? And the guy's like, super fucking far. And Galileo like, what if I saw even fucking farther? And I put a couple more lenses on. And the guy's like, my dude, you blew my mind. Wowzers. And so that's what Galileo did. He just built really big telescopes, and then he's like, I'm gonna look at the night sky. And he was kind of the first guy in human history to look at the sky beyond and see beyond just what the naked eye could see. And so because of this, he makes a couple of discoveries that nobody else had seen before, because literally nobody had seen it before. So it's kind of like the epitome of like white male privilege, where he's just like, see, I discovered everything. And it's like, dude, literally you were just the first guy to do it. And he's like, but that's why I'm amazing. Anyone could have seen these things. Anyways, I digress. So he sees some stuff and he's like, I'm amazing. Well, what did he see? Well, one, it's a big deal. He saw that the moon was textured. He looked at the moon and had all these little bumps around it. And he's like, whoa, it has like mountains. And that's like the same as Earth. And people are like, whoa. As we all know, according to Aristotle, like 2,000 years ago, the moon and the Earth, totally different things. That's the terrestrial sphere. It's all gods in space. And we're different. We're on Earth. That's why we're flat-ish. And he's like, my dudes, I think the moon and the Earth are a lot alike. And people are like, don't even go down this road. But he did. And then he also discovered something called Earthshine. And you've all seen Earthshine. You're more familiar with moonshine, right? It's a nice night. You're out there creeping along in the bushes with your soon-to-be hookup. And then, it's all beautiful and moonlit. And what that is, the moon isn't actually giving off light. It's reflecting light, right? So that what's happening is that there's the sun, and it shoots some light and hits the moon, and then that bounces down to the Earth. But we're not in the direct light of the sun. So we just see the reflected light from the moon. That's called moonshine. What's actually also happening is a process called Earthshine. Light hits the Earth and reflects back to the moon. So if you ever see a crescent moon, and you can see like the sliver of the moon that's super bright because the sun's on it, and then you see the rest of the moon that's like a little bit shaded, but you can kind of see the rest of the circle, that like darker but still kind of visible part of the moon is possible because of Earthshine, which is light from the sun reflecting off the Earth to the moon. And this like blew Galileo's mind, because he was like, wait, that means that light reacts the same way on Earth as it does in the cosmos, and that means that the cosmos and Earth are made of the same shit, and that means that the laws of physics must work in them both. And everyone was just like, because everyone thought that they were two different realms, so it was like a really, really big deal. Okay. And the last thing that he discovered that was also really, really big deal was that Jupiter has these little dots that are going around it. And he was like, staring at Jupiter for months, and he was like, why does it just seem to kind of wiggle a little bit? I don't get it. And eventually they were like, hey, I think those are moons, my dudes. And so in the first, kind of major corporate, shillery of his life, he named all the moons after like really rich dudes, so they'd give him money, which they did, which is actually kind of a brilliant idea. Maybe I should do that. Yeah, so maybe I'm Carla Bezos? No, that's gross. You can't do it. And so he names these moons after, these rich guys, the Medicis. But it proves that other planets have moons. And this destroys this idea of Earth having a really central, special place in the universe. Everyone's like, well, why is Earth the center of the universe? And the answer was, well, we have a moon. So literally, like, it's Earth's bling. And it's like, that's why we're so special, because we're rolling up with a moon. And then they're like, oh crap, Jupiter has them too. Wait, we're just like every other planet. And so it kind of like blows people's minds that maybe Earth isn't the center of the universe. So that's kind of one of the some of the things why Galileo was such a big deal. Now, I'm going to start skipping ahead because it's already getting a little bit long in the tooth and I got to get a couple more in. So I'm going to skip number 3, which was going to be why did Napoleon lose? And if you really want me to, maybe I'll do that next time. But we're going to skip to number 4 because we're not doing number 3. So don't worry about it. Number 4. 1791. I got asked the other day, what are my favorite revolutions? And I just kind of quickly picked a couple that came to mind. And one of them was 1917, Russian Revolution. That's why Instagram is carla.marks1917. I picked 1789 because that was a big one, even though it was bourgeois. It was kind of still a big deal in revolutions. And the other one I picked was 1791. And some people are like, what happened in 1791? Well, that's the Haitian Revolution, okay? And the Haitian Revolution is a really, really big deal, but it's often kind of downplayed in colonial colonial history because of, well, shit, racism really is the only reason. So the Haitian Revolution is a big deal. It was the first country in the world that was created by self-liberated slaves. And so it was a French colony, and this group of black French slaves liberated themselves in 1791 and fought a long war all the way up to 1804. And they fought and founded their own independence. So it was really cool. It involved black, French, Spanish, British participants, and the ex-slave Toussaint Louverture, which I'm probably butchering that pronunciation, I'm sorry. But he emerged as kind of like the leader of the movement and the hero. And this was the only slave revolution that led to the founding of a new state that was also free of slavery and also run entirely by non-whites and former captives. Okay? It's now widely seen as a defining moment in Atlantic history. And it really had a shaking effect on the institution of slavery around the world. It was the end of French rule, abolition of slavery in that region, and the former colony started to try to promote bringing other slaves out of slavery in the Caribbean region. It was the largest slave uprising since Spartacus, like Roman Spartacus, like before Jesus kind of came around and was like, hey, don't kill me, and they're like, do it. Anyways, so since Spartacus, this was the largest slave uprising. That was nearly 2,000 years before this. So it was kind of a really big deal. And the last one that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to slip one more in. We're going to go over one more. So it's 4 topics with the drag queen, because I just skipped one because the Napoleon one was going to take a long time. The last one I'm going to talk about is the Gulf of Tonkin incident. What's that? Well, we're going to do a little modern history. So this is 20th century stuff. The Gulf of Tonkin incident happened on technically the 2nd of April, 1964, but then there's another one on April 4th, 1964. Why is this so important? Well, there was a big American ship, the USS Maddox, that was sailing in the Gulf of Tonkin, which is off of Vietnam. And so the ship's sailing around, and there was kind of this like, okay, are we going to go to war with Vietnam? North Vietnam, are they going to fire back? What's going to happen? It's read about that war. Is maybe going to escalate? And so the American ship sees 3 North Vietnamese torpedo boats, and they're kind of playing cat and mouse. And then the Americans decide to fire a warning shot. Well, 200, what they classified as 280 different warning shots. They sunk a couple of the torpedo boats. The Maddox had a single bullet hole from a machine gun, and the Americans were like, how dare you? But that was about it. Okay, they kind of shot back and forth. Ships do this a lot more than we really know about. It's actually like little shooting actions happen a lot. So that happens. And then the next thing is 2 days later, the Americans announced that they've been attacked by North Vietnam, and it's the start of the war. They used this to pass the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, and the president at the time, Lyndon Bryan Johnson, who once picked up our premier, the Canadian Prime Minister, who invented peacekeeping, and shook him by the lapels. Lyndon Johnson was a very tall man, and Lester Pearson was very short, and he like picked him up and shook him. He's like, do what I want. Which, when people talk about like hostile relationships between Canada and the US, I always think of that personally. That's physical violence, but okay. So anyways, Johnson gets the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution passed. And this was a big one, because this is what really leads to the expansion of the war between America and Vietnam. And the crazy thing is that the second one, the one that they used as justification to start the whole war of, hey, North Vietnam attacked this American ship, never happened. And actually, if you watch the documentary Fog of War, the Secretary of State for the Americans at the time, Robert McNamara, even like was like, yeah, nobody attacked us. And even like goes and tracks down the leader of North Vietnam. He's like, so what happened on that day? And Giap is like, nothing. Like, nothing happened. You all just made this up. And so when this came out, it was called the Pentagon Papers. When this news broke, later in the 70s, and it was a really big deal because it basically discredited the whole American involvement in the Vietnam War, because they based it all on this attack. We was attacked idea that the North Vietnamese attacked us and we had to get out. We had to stop that, and it didn't actually happen at all. Okay, so thank you very much for following along with me. I am Cartland Marks. I've been your host for History with a Drag Queen. If you have any suggestions for topics you might like to see in the future, why don't you bang them down in the comments as well. Also, please do hit subscribe on that button for Cabaret Calgary. It means that you'll get all the updates of videos like this one, plus any other zany antics that I get up to, or any of the girls here at Cabaret Calgary. We're always up to something. So yeah, please click subscribe. I will see you next week. And if you have any suggestions, bang them in the the comments. All right. Thank you so much. Have a lovely day. And yeah, I'll talk to you later. Bye.